Hello, I'm Greg Rutke of Rutke Mods, and welcome to episode 3 of season 2 of my Mac Pro series. In this episode, we'll be comparing the pros and cons of the 2,1 Mac Pro with the 3,1 Mac Pro. Now, in season 1, we explained why you should buy a 2,1 versus a 3,1 or newer. Now, if you want to see that video, you can click right up here. And I explained to you back then, this was of course before Sierra was announced and we knew what it was going to do. I explained to you that the 2,1/1,1 could still run the most recent Mac OS. Now it can't. So we'll also be covering why you should consider a 3,1 in this video, and why you should still consider the 2,1, because it's still a very good system, and it will still continue to get security updates on El Capitan for the next few years, so you'll still be covered. But, of course, eventually that will be dropped. So we'll explain that in the upcoming part of the video. Anyway, so let's begin, and we'll go over everything. Okay, so we'll start out with the 2,1 Mac Pro here. Of course, the 1,1, everything applies to that too. It just has 2 less cores. And basically, if you're running a 1,1/2,1, there's many benefits and pros and cons with the system itself. Now, for instance, this system can run Tiger. If you need to run 10.4, go ahead. There's not much of a reason, unlike when you're running a PowerPC. But if you need to run Tiger, it will run Tiger. Plus it has other things going for it, like for instance, it's just really fun to play with. The system itself has a lot of outdated stuff in it, but it's still fun to play with. And even though it's a 32-bit EFI, it still has a lot of things that you can do to make it run great with newer operating systems. For instance, this system will run Tiger all the way through El Capitan. Of course, anything past line will have to be modified, but it will do it. And it will run it just like any other Mac that's supported on them, as long as you have a GPU upgrade. Now, even without the GPU upgrade, it will still run those operating systems, but you won't have acceleration support or anything like that, animation support, whatnot. And the resolution may not be quite right. So it won't look good, it won't perform well with the original card, but you can use the original card. Of course, with the GPU upgrade, that allows a whole vast upgrade system. All these options just automatically appear out of nowhere, basically. It really opens up the abilities of this system. And of course, this system's just as upgradable as the 3,1. Now, the drawbacks of having this system include, for instance, PCIe 1.1 speeds instead of PCIe 2. And it uses 667 MHz DDR2 ECC RAM, where the other system runs 800 MHz. We'll get more into the other system in a second. But those are the main issues there. The other issue is, of course, the lack of SSE 4.1 support, which translates into no Sierra for you, period. Sierra will not run on this system, and as I've finally came to the conclusion of, it's not going to ever run on the system. No one has been able to crack the code. There's no way to bypass it. So you're stuck on El Capitan, which isn't a bad thing right now. Of course, you'll still be getting those security updates, like I said earlier in the video. But that's a thing to keep in mind. But the other thing is, this system is still a very good system, like I've been saying. And it is still a killer Windows 10 machine. You can run Windows 10 64-bit with no problem. And if you want to watch videos like that, to learn how to do that, I can and will link some videos in this video for you to see. But anyway, getting back to the point, like I keep saying, the system is still very good, and with the proper upgrades, it can do a lot of things. its max RAM you can support is a 32 gig setup. Of course, people say you can do 64 gig, and I have tested it in the past. It just doesn't work right. It's not stable enough, and there's no real benefits to it, so stick with 32. Either way, 32 gigs is plenty enough RAM for any of today's major applications, and this system is still a heck of a gaming machine, especially in Windows. So that's another plus. As Mark from Super Ice Cream Sandwiches channel has shown off on Facebook, and he's planning on making a video, I believe, on it. If you have a USB 3.0 card and a compatible GPU, you can still do really extremely cool things. Like, for instance, he has been doing VR with his VR setup, and the only thing he needed was the card, the 3.0 card, and he is using a GTX 980 Ti. But, of course, as long as it's a supported card and you have the enough setup on it, you can do VR on it. So, like I keep saying, the 2.1 is still a very capable machine, even though it won't be able to run Sierra. But let's hop over to the 3.1. The 3.1 is still a very good system also, and the benefits of the 2.1 go further beyond on this because you don't have to be hacking things to make it work properly. For instance, it's got a 64-bit EFI, so you only have to do minor things to make Sierra work, and I'll be showing you how to install Sierra on this system coming up soon. But, for instance, any operating system after Leopard itself too, I believe it was 10.5.2 was the first operating system for this system. So this will run Leopard all the way to Sierra and hopefully beyond. So that's a plus. But of course it's only supported up to El Capitan, and then you have to hack it a little bit, but that's no issue. This will also be a great Windows 10 machine. It has much more performance in it. Altogether, these are both, this one right here is a 3.0 gigahertz CPU, and this one right here is a 2.8 gigahertz CPU. They both perform the same because this system has a 1600 megahertz CPU bus in it, where this has a 1333. So that equals out, and they both perform like a 3 gigahertz CPU in comparison, and the charts speak for themselves. The performance is basically the same. But, of course, there's some more advantages to this system compared to this system. This system had the option of one type of quad-core setup. When I say quad-core, I mean one type of 8-core setup where there's 2 quad-core CPUs. That was the 3 gigahertz setup for the 2.1. This will also, if you upgrade it, you can do the 266 gigahertz quads in it too, but that wasn't an option from Apple. And you also had multiple different setups of dual-core setups to have a quad-core setup. This one came with one quad-core or an 8-core setup. And the 8-core setups came in 3 different flavors: 2.8, 3.0, and 3.2 gigahertz CPUs. I will be upgrading the system to the 3.2, and it's going to make a very big difference between the two. For instance, 2.8 going to 3.2, that's 400 megahertz per CPU in increase. So that's a substantial amount of increase, and the 3.2 gigahertz just will help a whole lot. Anyway, so getting back to the point, like I've been saying, this is a Sierra-ready computer. Well, I wouldn't say ready, but it can run Sierra. Of course, you'll have to upgrade the Wi-Fi if you have an airport card in it, because the original doesn't support Sierra. But that's just one little issue and not very hard to fix. Anyway, like I've been saying, it's a very good system. And compared to this system has 2 2.0 PCIe slots in it, which are the 2 bottom slots, and then 2 1.1 slots on the top 2. I don't remember exactly the bandwidth of them, but I know that the bottom card's 16 times, so you're getting full 2.0 speeds out of the bottom slot. That helps a little bit, but compared to the two, it's not a huge difference for example graphics cards. Both of these systems are very good for editing with CUDA or any OpenGL setup. Of course, the CPUs themselves, rendering isn't that great in these days, but the more power you have, the better, and they'll still render. It just takes a long time. So if you're using a system like this, these are great, the CPU wise. They're great for light number crunching and for gaming. But for GPU number crunching, for instance, this will render extremely quick because bus speed doesn't really matter. And you can render through all those cards pretty easily if you have a good enough card. And the CPU will be able to keep up with them rendering. Of course, you'll get a few bottlenecks if you're gaming, but honestly, it's a very good performer for each system. Either one are fine. And like I said before, this requires a lot of hacking to get certain things to run. But it's very possible and quite fun if you enjoy doing those things. And this doesn't need much at all, none really, of hacking to get anything to run on it. So we'll go over the final specs here. This can do a max of El Capitan and the most recent version of Windows 10 64-bit with no problems, though you'll have to do the custom installs for 32-bit EFIs. This will run the latest version of Sierra and hopefully beyond with no problems, though you'll have to hack the installer to make it work. And it also runs the most recent version of Windows 10, and it does it quite well. And there really isn't any hacking required for that either. So, those two things said there, the value of both is still very strong, especially if you don't mind being on El Capitan. I'd suggest going to the 2.1. If you want to go to a Sierra system, 3.1 is a pretty good system. That's the reason why I bought it, because I wanted Sierra, and I'm a developer, and Xcode 8 doesn't support El Capitan anymore. So Sierra I had to jump on that bandwagon there and get a good, powerful system for that. But if you're not worried about the most recent app support and stuff, and you're fine with just getting security updates, the 2.1 is still a very good system. And of course, like I said before, it's still an extremely amazing Windows 10 PC. So that's all said there, and that's all said and done. Anyway, so that's basically why you should consider one versus the other. Finally, the 2.1, since Sierra has been said that it isn't being supported CPU-wise, the prices have dropped substantially for this system. But the 3.1's prices have also dropped because it wasn't officially supported with Sierra. So, in fact, this 3.1 I bought has the same support, basically. The same pricing, I mean. It cost roughly the same as this cost me last year. So it's a very good deal now, like this was a very good deal last year. But this is even a more good deal if you want a cheap Mac that can run El Capitan or earlier. And this, of course, is still a very good deal for having the most recent operating system. So anyway, let's finish wrapping up the video. Okay guys, so that's the end of the video, and in the next video we will be debunking the myths between the 1.1/2.1 Mac Pros and the 3.1 Mac Pros. So anyway, thank you for watching. This has been a Rutke Mods video. In this episode we will be... Hello, I'm Greg Rutke of Rutke Mods, and welcome to episode 2 of my Season 3. Hello, I'm Greg Rutke of Rutke Mods, and welcome to episode 2 of my... Damn it, I did it again. Hello, I'm Greg Rutke of Rutke Mods, and welcome to episode 2 of my... Damn it, I did it again. In this episode, we'll be recovering Hello, I'm Greg Rutke of Rutke Mods, and welcome to episode 2 of my Damn It as Mark from Super Ice Cream Chat. Okay, guys, that's the end of the video. In the next video, with woo! Okay, guys, so that's the end of the video, and in the next video, we'll be hee.